All right, so a week without UFC and Bellator, but still a big week in MMA news. We're going to be joined by UFC lightweight Devin Powell, Fighting Alliance ring announcer Jon Quinn, and from Sportsnet Fan 590 and the Fight Network, Kyle Norris. So, let's get into it. All right, and welcome to another episode of Fight Night Picks. I'm your host, Craig Allen. If you're new to the program, you can find me on Twitter at CraigAllenFNP. You can also find us on iTunes and Stitcher. There's a podcast there as well. There's a lot of neat stuff at FightNightPicks.net. So today, like I said, I'm bringing you a really great episode. We've got UFC lightweight Devin Powell. He's going to talk to us about his highlight reel knockout at UFC Calgary, where he knocked out Alvaro Herrera. It was something special. And we're also going to catch up and talk about any F-35 that's coming at you from Bangor, Maine next weekend. I'll be there covering it live. And Devin has a couple of fighters from his gym, Nostos MMA and Conditioning in Somersworth, New Hampshire. So we're going to talk about that. We're also joined by Fighting Alliance's ring announcer, Jon Quinn. He's also the marketing manager with the St. John Sea Dogs out of the QMJHL, which is Major Junior Hockey League up here in New Brunswick. So we're going to talk to Jon about Fighting Alliance 7. It was a great event. I had the pleasure of being there live, and about some of the fights there. And we're also going to talk about some of the big fights coming up later on this year, because you've got UFC 228 next weekend. You've got UFC 229, probably one of the biggest fights of all time in the UFC happening. And we're also joined by Sportsnet Fan 590 and Fight Network's Kyle Norris, and I'm really glad to have Kyle back on the show. He was here with us probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was a great interview. So Kyle and I are going to recap some of the biggest news this week in MMA. You had the whole Donald Cerrone experience on the Joe Rogan Experience as well. You know, there's been a lot of developments out of the Conor and Khabib camps leading up to UFC 229. So we're going to get right into that, and you're not going to want to miss that conversation. So to start off the show, let's hear from Devin. So awesome, Devin. Thanks so much for coming back on the show. Last time we spoke, you know, you were looking for a fight, you were getting ready. Maybe there was something in the future, but you got the fight against Alvaro Herrera. I mean, what was the game plan like going into that fight?
The game plan was to take him down. We said that would be a smart thing to do. We didn't know when, we didn't know how. I was pretty banged up going into the fight. I pretty much was training 13 months straight, hoping that I'd get a short notice fight. So it was hard training continuously for that long with the idea of I could hop into a fight camp and fight within a couple weeks. You know, like you usually let yourself rest a little bit in between, and you know, you enjoy life a little, and then you go full on fight camp. But so it was tough, and then all of a sudden I was trying to ramp it up for 30 days when I had already been training really hard, and immediately was just too banged up, couldn't turn my head one way. So the takedowns I liked, I had to all of a sudden try and do it a different way. So I didn't really feel great about taking anybody down, and I didn't get my takedown, and it ended up being okay.
Yeah.
But I usually don't have much of a game plan. I feel pretty good everywhere. I feel like my defense on my feet is pretty solid, and I'm very comfortable standing up, and I don't feel like I take much damage. And the way I fight, you know, if I end up on my back, I'm not worried about it. If my kicks put me down, I'm not too concerned. I'll fight off my back, and I'll find a way on top. But yeah, you know, we kind of had the idea that if we're playing odds, being on our feet was the lesser of the two, but we still felt like I could get the job done. But we definitely were rolling the dice a little bit more so than if we were to be on the mat. But you know, that's why we fight. We got it done to the body. So
yeah, exactly. And I mean, I figured it was going to be a jiu-jitsu heavy fight going up against a guy who had been submitted twice in a row in two pretty big fights. And then, I mean, you went in there, you know, kind of against the game plan, getting the highlight reel knockout. I mean, what was it like to get a finish like that?
Oh man, it felt good. It definitely felt a lot better than, like, you know, I don't know. I mean, it all feels good, you know, but that one was something special for sure. It's something that in training I had called. I told my one of my coaches and friends, Jason, who was it was unfortunate for him that he was the same height and he had to be my sparring partner, because I was trying to land that kick a lot because I like it a lot. And you know, in my first fights I got a little head hungry with the kicks and I wasn't setting them up right, and this one I was trying to change levels a little bit more between each kick, and I found the home, and I'd found it in sparring, just going, relatively light too, and I folded a couple people. So him being one of them, I just said, hey, I'm sorry that you had to feel this, but just know that you're helping me set this up for the fight, and I know that if I catch him 100% with that kick, then I'm gonna finish the fight. And sure enough, it happened. I actually heard him. You don't see it unless you care enough to look back at it. I throw a left knee to the body straight up the middle and catch him, and he lost all his air when I hit him with it. The angle's from behind his back, so you kind of see me throw it up, but you can't really tell that it lands that good. But I heard him go, huh, and I saw his hands come down a bit, so I immediately, from a southpaw stance, fired the kick to the body right away because I knew his body was hurt, and it landed perfect.
Yeah, I mean, you got the early finish. It was a great win in Calgary. Any chance, you might be back in the octagon before the end of the year?
Yeah, 100%. It was such a long layoff, it was so stressful. It's insane. And it's a very stressful job, but it's honestly a lot stressful when you have a name. When you're kind of just sitting there and like, oh man, Sean Shelby going to call me? Before it was Joe Silva, but you're just like, Sean going to call? Am I going to get an email? Am I going to get a fight today? Who's it going to be? Is it going to be a wrestler? Is it going to be this crazy knockout artist? Like, when you have all these, like, what ifs or who is it going to be? Like, all that, it's so much more stressful. But when it's like, all right, this is who I'm fighting, it's a fist fight. Just go get the job done, train, focus. That's way better. It's the in-betweens that are rough. The best time, honestly, the fighting's fun, but the best time is the 1 week after, because it's all over and you're like, well, I'm not going to get a fight, at least for a little bit. So enjoy the fruits of your labor. Regardless of your win or your loss, you have to put that aside. It's really hard to do that, but you have to be able to separate yourself from that. Enjoy the fact that you put in all the hard work and you got in the cage and you competed against somebody at the on the biggest stage of the world. So I like to go to something like spectacular after a fight. Like Arizona, when I fought, I went to the Grand Canyon. After this fight, I went to the Banff Mountains in Canada.
They're pretty cool, eh?
Oh my God. And one of my favorite things was actually, it's like a long path that leads up to these two different waterfalls that were in Banff, and there's like all these like railings and like platforms that you're like walking on cliffs and stuff, and then there's two beautiful waterfalls there, and that was one of my favorite things. Going in the water there, it was unreal. We get some photos and videos of the waterfalls, and but yeah, I like going to something that is a lot bigger than us, just to remind me that after a fight, like, you can win or you can lose, but at the end of the day, the page turns and then you're on to the next thing. Whether it's another fight or whatever it is, like, you got to kind of get past it and push forward, because I actually heard it from Yair Rodriguez, who put it into a great perspective for me. It's a great life lesson, or just something to keep on your mind all the time. But if you live in the past, you're depressed. If you live in the future, you're anxious. If you live in the present, you're happy. So that's kind of how I'm trying to live my life, especially with that long 13 months of just like craziness. Now I'm just finally get that fight. I can kind of breathe a little bit more, just live it day by day, enjoy training, enjoy family, enjoy life.
Yeah.
Kind of live it,
I mean, you guys were fortunate coming back home after the win with the gym. I mean, you guys just won Best Seacoast Martial Arts Gym once again for the second year in a row. And we've got Bangor, from Bangor. You've got NEF 35 Wicked Season coming up next weekend. You've got a couple fighters. So what can we expect out of the fighters from your gym? And how's business been with the gym?
It's been great. We had just yesterday. Yesterday was Monday. Yeah, just yesterday we had 10 new students start, which was awesome. A lot of youth students, a handful of adult students. So that was pretty amazing. Today we had a couple new students start training as well. So yeah, business has been great. The fights always help. It's kind of funny, they hurt a little bit and then they help, because I take time off from teaching because I need to focus on the fight. Like, I train, like I said, it was pretty much a 13-month fight camp, but I'm still teaching a tremendous amount of classes, which I feel like I'm getting better when I teach because I'm continuously studying and looking up new things and trying to learn. And I want to make sure all my students are getting the best that I can possibly give them. But obviously, I'm not quite getting exactly what I would in a normal fight camp. So I had 1 month to prepare and to cut weight. So I pretty much gave all my classes up for that month. Had some of my really good students take them for me. Um, and then just that, like that happens. And some of the newest students that don't really understand what's going on as far as me. And that's kind of a selfish thing to say, but they don't really know why I'm not there. You know, their black belt coach, this guy that does MMA. Some are just there and they want to lose some weight, and they're not getting that person that I'm the business owner. I'm running the gym. My goal is to make sure they stick around, really cater to them. These fighters and stuff that are running classes will run a great class, but they won't always, go over and be like, "You're doing great," this or that, and I'm the one giving up the classes. So we always lose a few bodies, and then I fight, and win or lose, it's obviously better when I win, but people see that I'm on TV or whatever, and they flock to it. They like that, which I'm very fortunate to have that aspect. And then we go into the kind of rebuilding stage, which we need to do after each fight. But the Best of the Seacoast Award was huge. That helped a lot too. So yeah, business is great. The NEF card coming up is always great. We have friends and family all go to the fights. People get motivated when they see guys fight, and they all come in to train. And then people say they want to fight. They start training, because they see their buddy go out there. So it's always good. We get some really talented guys going out there. The person I'm really most excited about, to be honest, two of them are just going to do great. Two of them are just really good high school wrestlers. One of them's a phenomenal purple belt. One of them's a multiple-time state champ wrestler, I believe, at least one time, and he's already fought. The other one, Andrew Brown, he's just a freak athlete, incredible athlete, and great jiu-jitsu, great wrestling. So I got no worries. The one that I'm most excited about and I'm most nervous about, because it's kind of like pushing my baby into the octagon, is a kid that he's the only person that when I started this gym, he was a student. Like there was nobody that signed up. He there like this because he done martial arts at basically where I took a week and we're going to close doors or let me take over and renovate the facility, make a new gym there. And he was the only one that pretty much stuck around. And he's like, yeah, I still want to train, once you're open, I'll do it. And he's been training every day since. Like, he's really casual about it, though. Like, he comes in, trains, like, never really wanted to fight, but he just, 4 years later, now he's just like, hey, I just want to try this. And I'm so excited to see this kid, Jesse Fitzsimmons, get in there, because he's just, like, the dude that everybody loves. He's just a goofball, and, like, everybody's going to be holding their breath because he's fighting a good dude, too. Like, Andrew Brown's fighting an independent guy. It's almost like Jesse should be fighting the independent because he's not an athletic kid. He's just comes in, he works hard every day. He has kind of a dad bod, and he's fighting a dude that's like our intel on him is he's 5'7", super short, so I'm guessing he's gonna be stocky and powerful. He's done a handful of grappling tournaments, taken first and second in them. So this kid comes from an actual gym. So Jesse's the one that I'm holding my breath and biting my nails because I love that kid so much. But they're all great, and they're all gonna do well. But two of them just already have that in their blood. Jesse, we're gonna figure out, if this is what he wants to do or not.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, that's kind of where you kind of shone on an international stage, winning at looking for a fight and then getting the contract, obviously. And I really appreciate you coming back on the show. Looking forward to seeing you at the NEF card. I'm going to make the drive down. It's about 2.5 hours from where I am, so I'll be there. Yeah, Devin, thanks so much for coming on, man. And if you've got any fans that are out there looking for you, where can they find you online? And if you got any sponsors, let us know too.
Yeah, I got a lot of sponsors, so it's kind of hard to run through them without the list. But they're all great. One of them that I could definitely shout out since we're going up that way, though, Sea Dog. Sea Dog's awesome. Bert from Sea Dog's the man. but yeah, we got a lot of good sponsors. But yeah, I'm on Facebook. I think that every once in a while I have to delete a couple weirdos, so you might be able to get me on there. Otherwise, I think you can just follow me because I'm at the 5,000 limit about. Instagram, it's Devin Powell _ Nostos MMA, I think. Twitter, I think it's just Devin Powell MMA. Twitter, I'm bad at. I got to get better at it. So if you know how to do Twitter well, just let me know because I don't know what the hell I'm doing on that.
Yeah,
It's not too
100%.
straightforward. But yeah,
Awesome.
that's yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, like I said, we'll be seeing you in a week, I guess. Jesus, really coming up, and hopefully you get a fight here soon.
Yeah, you got it, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Great to have Devin back on the show. He's actually on the audio podcast at the start of July. And when we were talking, he was looking and searching to get a fight and finally got one against Alvaro Herrera. Threw those 2 body kicks and ended up getting a pretty good knockout. So hopefully we can see him back in the cage, and I'll be sure to bump into him at NEF 35 next weekend in Bangor. Really looking forward to that event and, seeing what his fighters are going to bring to the table. So let's transition and have a conversation with Jon Quinn. He was the ring announcer at Fighting Alliance 7 last weekend in St. John, and I was fortunate enough to cover the event live as well. He's the marketing manager with St. John Sea Dogs. You see him running around the rink. He's on the Jumbotron. He's having fun with the fans, and it's always fun to talk to Jon. So here's a conversation. So Jon, thanks so much for joining me. A lot of people in Southern New Brunswick are most likely familiar with you. Where would most folks have seen you?
Hopefully a good place. No, most people would have seen me probably at a St. John Sea Dogs home game. So I've been the in-game host with them at Harbour Station now, coming up to my 5th season. And I just kind of started doing that on a whim. They were looking for an in-game host back then, and I had a few friends message me with the ad and say, hey, you should apply for this. And at the time, I think I had hosted a few trivia events and things around town, and I had always kind of been comfortable around a mic and doing that sort of thing. And so I applied to do that and got that job, and I've been doing it ever since. And then I've kind of transitioned that into my MMA hobby, and now I've done a few live MMA events as well. So most people I run into say, hey, you're the Sea Dogs guy, whether they know my name or what I really do. I work for the Sea Dogs full time as well. It's not just the game hosting on game nights, but most of the time it would be through the Sea Dogs.
You go on the road with the team at all?
Not for that role. My main role with them is marketing manager. I have gone on the road with them a few times. I've been full time with them now a little under 2 years, and I've done probably 3 road trips. We were in the Memorial Cup in 2017, so I got to go there for 11 days and follow them and get content, and that was really cool. And I was there for the President Cup finals as well in Blainville when we won the Cup in 2017 for the league. And then I went on a random road trip. I was covering some content. We had 2 fans join us on a back-to-back games in Halifax and Cape Breton, and then I got to go on the bus for that. And that was probably enough bus for me. It's about 8 hours to get to Cape Breton to Sydney on the bus. So that was good enough for me to do it once. I might stick to Moncton, Charlottetown, Halifax games if I'm going to travel. But no, I don't regularly travel with the team.
No, it sounds good. So we ran into each other this past weekend at Fighting Alliance 7. It wasn't your first announcing gig with an MMA event, but what was the vibe like going into that? You said it wasn't your first one, but what have you done previous to this?
Like I said, Sea Dogs, I've done, probably close to 200 games at this point, and that's, in the crowd doing, I'm here in Section J with 2 pizzas for Jimmy. Hey, Jimmy, you got a weird shirt on. Let's give it up for Jimmy. Everyone, right? Just sort of one-off things where I have sort of a rough script, but it's kind of up to me to entertain and be funny or just kind of be myself and do that, where MMA, I did my first event back in May of last year. I did the weigh-ins for PKL, the Professional Kickboxing League at Fredericton, run by Andy Young. I knew one of the fighters in it, and I traveled with him to UFC 217 in New York. And he said, oh, man, if you ever want to do it, I'm sure I could get you in. I know the guy. There's a fight coming up or whatever. And so I said, yeah, definitely put my name in. And he came back and said, I already have someone for the main card, but I need someone for the weigh-in. So you come and do that. So I wanted to get my foot in the door. So my first actual MMA experience was doing the weigh-ins, which, isn't the happiest time for fighters as they're disgruntled and starving and they just want to get out of there. So I'm trying to, put on a show, and all they want to do is, announce their weight and get some food and water into them. So it was cool because you get to meet everyone and kind of see behind the scenes, something like a weigh-in. And then they liked what I did, and I had people kind of come up to me later at the event that I attended later after the weigh-ins, and they said, oh, do you do this? You should do this. I recognize you from the Sea Dogs or whatever it was. So I kind of had not hype behind me, but I had a few people kind of in my corner saying, hey, you might be good at this. And so I ended up doing my first one for PKL again in their November show. And that was extremely nerve-wracking. I mean, I've done almost 200 games now with the Sea Dogs in front of upwards of 6,000 people on a sold-out night. But, in front of 1,500 people at PKL, my knees were knocking together, and I was pretty nervous when they first turned the mic loose at the opening. But MMA is definitely, that's not that I don't like hockey, but I mean, I've done it so many times now that I'm really comfortable with it, and it's not, it doesn't get my heart racing as much as it used to. So to now do MMA and to see the action live after you're, announcing and see the impact you have not only on the fans but the fighters as you're staring across from them and hyping them up either before or after a fight is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the Cormier Jones poster behind you. You got the 217 poster, so
yeah.
I could kind of tell that you were a fan. It was the first Fighting Alliance card in St. John, in New Brunswick, and in Canada. As far as it was concerned, we had 3 amateur fights, 4 pro fights. To you, what fight stuck out the most, and which one would you consider as possibly a fight of the night?
Whew, that's a tough question. I kind of went back and I just found the videos actually that someone had posted of kind of every fight, and I was trying to think, because I knew you'd ask this question of who did win and what was the finish of that fight, because as it goes on you kind of forget the finer details. Obviously the KO in the main event from DiMarc Antonio was highlight reel. To that point, I mean, it was a close-ish fight in the first round, right up until he caught Gibbon. For me, I mean, that was the highlight was the KO. It happened 2 feet in front of me, right up against the cage. So that was definitely memorable. Other performances that stood out, Tyler Wilson. His clinch game was otherworldly. I mean, it seemed like Vladimir Kazbekov was the guy who was fighting. It seemed like a mismatch, and I was actually sitting next to one of the commission members from the New Brunswick Combat Commission, and he was like, oh, geez, I don't know about this fight. Like, it looks like a mismatch, and Vladimir's, cut from stone and looks like he's a seasoned vet, and I think he had a couple more fights than Tyler Wilson did, and Tyler Wilson looked like he was definitely new and green, and the striking wasn't there as much, but once he got him into the corner, the knees and the body blows started raining in, and the fight definitely took a turn, and before you knew it, it was a KO due to body strikes, which I did not see coming. So I mean, that fight stood out to me after, when I looked back and said, what was kind of my big moment of the night.
Yeah, that one was probably my fight of the night. I mean, first round started, Kazbekov, he knocked Wilson down. I thought, geez, that's it. Like, right from the get-go, the fight's over. Yeah. And then Wilson slowly get into it, and then he tired Kazbekov out, and I threw my phone up. I thought, I'll get a picture of it. Ended up turning it into a video, and I got that final, the body... knee to the body knockout. So yeah, I mean, it was a really good event, and like you said, the main event with Gibbon and DiMarc Antonio, I think there might have been a lot of stock put into Gibbon, where he was just an import coming over from the UK.
Yeah, they always seem to get a lot more hype when you see someone that's not from, Halifax or Moncton or Montreal even. It's someone that says, they didn't even advertise the city, they just said UK on the poster. So I had to go up and ask them, like, where are you from? What's your deal? So yeah, they definitely get a bit more of a hype train behind them.
Had a bit of a salty record, and I mean, if you really looked into it, DiMarc Antonio, actually, his record wasn't the best, but still he had fights against Rob Font and Desmond Green, who are both in UFC. So that stuck out to me the most. And I mean, the left high kick followed by the overhand for the knockout finish, that was something special. So I know going forward, you're going to be a little bit bogged down once the major junior season starts. I think I looked, and it's September 21st is the first home game you guys are taking.
Correct.
Halifax, right?
Against Halifax, yeah. The host of the Memorial Cup this year, Halifax, so they're going to be a stacked team, but they won't have all their players there probably for the home opener, because a lot of guys will be in NHL camps and things. So we got a pretty good fighting chance on opening night with them.
No, and it should be good. I'm sure you guys will have a packed house as well. So, moving forward, we've got a sneaky fight card coming up here soon. You got UFC Moncton. Will you be in attendance for that one?
I will be. I've planned on. We do have a home game the next day on Sunday afternoon, but no, I'll be there in Moncton for sure. I went to the last card in Halifax that was in the region, and it was a great show. So yeah, the card to me, I mean, there's not one or two fights that kind of stick out to go, oh my goodness, I have to see that fight. But I mean, I've seen big cards and smaller cards, and I mean, you never know on paper what's going to turn out to be an exciting one. I mean, I went to 206 in Toronto, and everyone said this is the worst card of the year, and this is awful, and you ended up having the consensus fight of the year on the card, plus 2 or 3 other really memorable fights. So, I mean, I don't put too much weight into how it looks on paper, but I mean, there's still some good matchups that I'm excited to see. I like Ozdemir for sure, and I'm not a huge fan of Anthony Smith, although he has grown on me a little bit. But I see that one ending rather quickly for Ozdemir.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one should be good. One of the fights that you brought up when we were talking this weekend was Andrei Sukumtov taking on Gavin Tucker. And I mean, I've got the poster behind me right there with from Halifax. I mean, Gavin Tucker, it was a big hype train taking on Sam Sicilia. And it reminds me, when I think of the fight, of almost like Dominic Cruz when he took on Cody Garbrandt. I mean, he just kind of schooled him out there. So it'll be interesting. I mean, Sukumtov didn't look great in his last fight.
That's true, and he took a lot of flack after his mistake against O'Malley when he, didn't take him down and just let him stand there on one leg and 8 shots until the round ended. But I think he's got a lot to prove. But I think Tucker too. It's hard to rebound from the beating that he took. I mean, it was 120 shots or something unanswered that he just took on the ground. So I mean, that's a fight that can change a lot of guys, and he had a lot of hype behind him, and maybe he comes out and is a little gun shy, and against someone like Sukumtov, who's now has something to prove after the internet basically hated him for since his last fight. It might not go Tucker's way, but obviously as a local guy, I got to pull for him.
Yeah, for sure, and really looking forward to that one, especially where he's dropping down a weight class. So really like to thank you, Jon, for coming on. Hopefully we can see you at more MMA events locally, and hopefully the hockey season goes well for you. Where can fans find you online?
That's a great question. Twitter, you can find me at Quinn of the Net, QUINNOFTHENET. They say never spell or do math live, so big mistake on my part. Twitter, I don't post too much on Twitter. Instagram would probably be a little bit better. The Quinternet on Instagram, or you can just find me on Facebook as well.
Best handles in the game, and hopefully we can have you back on soon.
Thanks very much, Greg.
Awesome having Jon on the show. It was great connecting with him last weekend at the Fighting Alliance event in St. John. I was manning a merch table. You could pick up some of the Fight Night Picks stuff, and we just started talking about MMA, and I couldn't believe how much he knew, how many events he had been to, and he's also covered, like he said, PKL, professional kickboxing here in Fredericton, as well as that Fighting Alliance show in St. John where he's based. So great having him on. We're going to have him back on again. Really looking forward to it. So now I'd like to introduce my last guest of the episode. The moment you've all been waiting for, I guess, some of the biggest news we're going to cover. It's Sportsnet Fan 590 and the Fight Network's Kyle Norris. Great to have him back on the show, and we're going to talk about some of that really big news. I mean, you've had Conor and Khabib news, you've had Cerrone, you've had Till. It's been a great week for MMA news, even though there hasn't been a UFC or Bellator event. So here's my conversation with Kyle. So Kyle, thanks so much for coming back on the show. You were featured on the 3rd episode. Since I moved over to YouTube. What have you been up to since the last time you were on the show?
Not much. Just been a little bit busy. Just a lot of work, a lot of stuff. I missed out on a lot of those events last weekend, but I'm catching up, slowly watching them again. So just getting back into the groove of things. It's been a slow time for MMA too. We haven't had as many UFC events, which is usually the focus. So it's been a little bit of a lagging time right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's no UFC, no Bellator this weekend. I was fortunate enough to be at Fighting Alliance 7 last weekend, so I kind of rushed back home from St. John to Fredericton, got a chance to watch the last 3 fights of UFC Lincoln, and it was a pretty good event if you had a chance to catch it.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. For sure, that main event too. Holy man, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. That was a big win for Gaethje to break that losing streak as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I had Vic going into that fight, and I figured he was going to be able to get the win by submission. But yeah, that was a tough one to watch. And I mean, like you said, it's a little bit slow this weekend. You've got PFL, you've got Invicta. There's some Cage Warriors too. I'm pretty excited about it. But I mean, it's been a big week news-wise. And I mean, I think the biggest bit of news this week's been from the Joe Rogan Experience with Cowboy Cerrone on there. I mean, what were some of the takeaways you got from that show?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Well, that news coming out about we never even heard about this whole Winklejohn Cerrone kind of back and forth that seems to be a thing that's been going on for a while between the two of them. But it's pretty eye-opening that we have these kind of rivalries in between gyms and maybe some disagreements between coaches. I mean, we've heard lately Mackenzie Dern obviously leaving the gym that she used to train at. That's probably the biggest thing we've heard out of gym kind of conflicts with coaches and fighters. But for sure, this one's a big one. I mean, I never expected there to be anything going wrong because Cerrone's been there for so long, and obviously he just started his own gym sort of thing at the ranch that he lives at, and he had that whole thing, and I guess that didn't sit too well with Winklejohn. He had some issues already with him, and I mean, it's pretty tough to see that maybe potentially. I mean, it's a little bit of a he said she said with how it's been going, because Winklejohn just came out with his comments as well. But yeah, I wonder if there's that conflict and Winklejohn taking Mike Perry over Donald Cerrone, and just that lack of communication. So I wonder how that'll affect things. Maybe it'll make the fight a little more spicy now, because there'll be some sort of back and forth. The two have been very cordial with each other.
Yeah.
They've been pretty friendly. Like, we're just going to go out there and we're going to bang, and maybe there's going to be some little bit of a tension now.
Yeah, I mean, it was really weird because if you watched MMA Junkie Radio last week, Mike Perry was on there and he was talking about it. He said, Cowboy's going to be training at his ranch. The coaches are kind of going to be split between them. And then afterwards, everything's going to be fine and we'll go about our business. And I thought, geez, that's weird for Mike Perry to say that. Like, take it with a grain of salt, everything he says. But especially with that one, I thought, weird. I wonder if Cowboy get kicked out. And then Cowboy goes on Joe Rogan Experience and just explodes. I mean, I don't normally watch the episodes, just where they're usually about 3 hours long. It's kind of tough to sit down and watch a whole one. But the last Cowboy episode, I made sure I sat down, I watched it, and I made sure for this one I was watching it live. And I mean, good thing, because I haven't watched, the relaunch of it, or the they put it back up on YouTube, but they took it down and then they put it back up. So I don't know what they've cut out, but I found it weird that, openly criticizing the gym he's been with for so long. It was kind of weird. Then he outed the team's wrestling coach, Chad Smith, as a former steroid peddler, and that was how he lost his job at his last gym, which, I mean, that seems like a no-no. Like, you don't go outside of your camp and say that, right?
Yeah, but it seems, I guess, he's kind of disconnected himself now. I don't think he's going back there now, especially with the tension there and them taking Perry, a guy who's very new to the UFC, over Cerrone, who's a legend of the sport and a guaranteed Hall of Famer. So I think he's kind of distanced himself now, and I don't think we're going to see him back there. You kind of hate seeing that kind of stuff, because MMA is it's obviously there's beefs between opponents, but at the end it's all respect.
Yeah.
And to have that kind of lack of respect, or lack of sort of being friendliness or whatever it is, it's kind of disappointing to see that you got that disagreement with one of the best gyms in MMA and one of the best fighters as well.
For sure. And I mean, another one of the bigger things that I got from the conversation was the fact that Donald Cerrone's openly talking about microdosing magic mushrooms, taking DMT and his whole DMT trip, smoking marijuana on the show openly. And I mean, I guess it's out of competition and it's not really in that window where they test you for it and where you get suspended, but man, Dana White's got to be upset about it.
It's a tough situation especially with the smoking of marijuana and stuff. Like, it's that borderline of, anyways, should it be illegal? Should we?
Yeah. It's
being legalized throughout states. It's going to be in Canada eventually. It's like it's becoming legalized, and to have it still looked and frowned upon by USADA, especially even if we're not in the window where he can get in trouble for it, it's still on that borderline a little bit. But yeah, Dana, I'm sure, I guess, well, you never know with Dana. I mean, all attention is good for him, I guess. He's always, I mean, Conor McGregor threw a dolly through a bus, and he's still using it as a promotion. So I don't think Dana will be too worried about it.
No, I mean, it was a crazy episode. It's been probably the biggest, nugget of news this past week. And another thing, and a big developing story leading up to UFC 228 next Saturday, has been Darren Till's weight cut. I mean, he met with the media the other day. I'm going to quote it. I'm going to read it. So, John Morgan asked him about his weight cut. He said, it's shit. I hate cutting weight. I hate making weight. I hate dieting. And he looked bad at the workouts, too. I mean, what do you make of Darren Till trying to make weight? And if he wins next weekend, is he going to keep fighting at welterweight?
It's tough to see. He's gigantic. He's absolutely huge. You saw him against Woodley, and he's got his hands over his head, and looks huge. His forearms are the size of Woodley's head, and it's just like, that guy should be fighting at middleweight. And you got to think that Woodley's a smaller guy. He's made to fight in the welterweight division. I think that's where he belongs. And Darren Till cutting all this weight to get there, that's going to take so much out of him. And Woodley's not someone to sleep on. I mean, he may have had a few decision wins in his past few defenses of the title, but the guy's an absolute monster. Like, going into that Robbie Lawler fight, I expected Robbie to be just fine. He's a zombie. The guy can walk through punches, and he got absolutely starched. So Woodley, that's his division. That's the Woodley weight division, to quote him. So I think that Darren Till might be in some trouble, especially if it's going to be a hard weight cut, which it already looks like it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you had a 100% healthy Darren Till who's, rocking like a lightweight, almost cruiserweight, walking into the cage, if he weighed like between 205 and 225, and you got Tyron Woodley around 200 pounds, that would be a more interesting fight, but especially where Darren Till's got to cut all this weight. He almost died in his last weight cut. There was the blindness issues. I mean, I think it's ridiculous. And he said in an interview, it was either today or it was during that media scrum, he said, I'm going to want to defend the belt once, then I'm going to move up to middleweight, and then he possibly wanted to fight Yoel Romero. So we'll see what happens there. But I think a fight against Tyron Woodley, and I'm glad you mentioned it, the fight against Robbie Lawler, you look at the fight against Carlos Condit, and even Josh Koscheck, and I mean, when I say that, we're going back 5 years, so it's kind of tough, but Tyron Woodley has knockout power, he's got great wrestling, you look at his fights against Maia and Wonder Boy, a lot of defensive fighting, but it makes sense. He wants to hold on to that title and keep making the big bucks.
Yeah, for sure. But exactly, we just quoted how Darren Till was talking about moving up in weight. To me, that's just such a waste of time. I feel that wastes everybody's time, that you're going to win this title, and
exactly.
For what? You're not going to defend it. But it's the days that we live in now where you just win titles to put it on the resume so that when you finish your career, you're like, oh, look, I had this title. I just think it's a waste of time for everybody, because Woodley's trying to be the best welterweight of all time and then lead to the best fighter of all time. And it doesn't look like Darren Till's looking for the same pathway like that. He's looking to be the best fighter of all time by taking that kind of Conor McGregor, Daniel Cormier, these guys who win 2 belts in different divisions and try to cement a legacy that way. But I just think Woodley's going for that traditional route, that GSP route that we saw. And I think that is what a lot of people love the sport for, is seeing people be dominant in their weight class. And I don't want to see that get changed up by guys that are trying to just move up in weight classes and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, Tyron Woodley, he's 35 now. Darren Till, significantly younger than him. So, yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens there. And moving on, probably another one of the biggest bits of news this week. You've got UFC 229 coming up on October 6th from Vegas. And it's come out that, Javier Mendez doesn't really believe in Khabib striking. He's not going to try and force him to get to McGregor's level as far as the striker's concerned. But, I mean, of course, he came out and said that, Khabib's going to come out early, look for those takedowns. And at the same time, there was news that Floyd Mayweather offered to train Conor McGregor in striking. What do you make of that?
It's such a weird scenario, especially offering that to Conor. Conor's a guy that's never, ever going to go to another gym. He is with SBG for life. He's all about loyalty. That's always been his thing, and one of the things that you can respect him for no matter what is his loyalty to his family, to his friends, to his gym. So reaching out, I knew Conor wasn't going to go for it. He wasn't going to go train with a rival, a guy that beat him. He doesn't take losing well. You saw with Nate Diaz, he lost and he wanted that rematch immediately. So he obviously didn't take it well. We saw his comment that he had on Twitter firing back at Floyd, which Floyd obviously doesn't care about. He won the fight. So yeah, I don't think Conor cares too much anyways. He's going to do his thing. He doesn't need a boxer telling him how to fight mixed martial arts anyways. And then moving over to the point about Javier Mendez's comments about Khabib, I think it's a classic grappler versus striker matchup. I think, 100%. Like, Conor's going to want to keep that standing. If it goes to the ground, he's in trouble. Khabib wants to take it down. If it stays on the feet, he's in trouble. So I just think it's who's going to be able to implement their game more. And I think it's really interesting that Daniel Cormier is working obviously with Khabib. I wonder if he's training with him. I'm not 100% sure on that. But Daniel's a master at getting inside people and trying to get into their takedown range and try to take them down. So that's what Khabib needs to do. He needs to get in that range. And on the other hand, Conor's the best at keeping people outside and picking them off. And I just think it's a great matchup. I think anybody that knows MMA has no idea what's going to go on in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, it could. I've got it like I think everybody else has it. If Conor's going to win, it's got to be an early knockout, and if Khabib's going to win, it's going to be a grind him out matchup. And he could get a finish later on. It could go to decision too. I mean, both guys could get nervous. You never know. We've seen that a lot lately. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting. As far as Floyd Mayweather's concerned, I think he just wanted to get his name out there. I mean, he's retired from boxing. He's not really in competition, so it's a good way to make an extra few bucks if he can. and it'll be really interesting to see. I think this is one of the best matchups, the UFC's ever seen. It's going to be a huge fight. And as far as Conor's concerned with SBG, I mean, he's got one of the best striking coaches out there in Owen Roddy, and I know people are going to hear this and they're going to go after me on Twitter, defending SBG. It seems to be, a topic of contention, I guess, with the fans out there. But, I think it's going to be a really great fight. And, October 6th can't come quick enough, eh?
I know. It's going to be a great fight.
100%. So, Kyle, thanks so much for coming back on the show. Really appreciate it. Where can fans find you online? And if you've got anything you're working on, let us know.
Yeah, I'm at Katie Norris 111 on Twitter. Nothing planned right now. Nothing. No articles written yet, but I'm working on some stuff. So we'll see in the future. I'll update anybody on my Twitter over there, and that's where you can catch me.
And we can find you where? Sportsnet Fan 590, still at Fight Network too?
Yep. Still both places.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on. We'll have to have you back on again soon.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks a lot, Craig.
Great having Kyle back on the show, and I mean, there was a lot of great MMA news out there in the absence of UFC and Bellator fights this weekend. I mean, it was crazy what happened with Donald Cerrone and what he said on the Joe Rogan Experience. So glad we could get into that as well. I had a chance today to be a part of the Talk-to-Gon with Ty O'Keefe on Dialogue, so make sure you check that out. We broke it down in depth, as well as some of the news from this week. So make sure you check out some of the Fight Night Picks content. This weekend, I'm going to be hosting Fight Night Picks for the fans again on Dialogue, so check out that link. It's going to be on Saturday, and I love having conversations about MMA with all of you, not just on Twitter, but when we can actually talk live on a platform. So it's a lot of fun for me, and I hope you guys really enjoy it as well. And this weekend, I'm really looking forward to Cage Warriors 96 coming at you from the Echo Arena in Liverpool. You've got hometown boy Paddy Pimblett. He's taking on Soren True Viking Warrior Bach. They're going to be fighting it out for the vacant lightweight title. You can catch the main card on UFC Fight Pass as well. The pro prelims are going to be on Sport Bible, so make sure you look out for that. That's what I'm going to be watching this week, and hopefully I can connect with everyone out there on Dialogue. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Fight Night Picks. Make sure you subscribe up there, and we'll be back again next week bringing you another great episode of the show. So thanks for tuning in.